Thanks to Rupert Lowe, the British Pakistani Muslim R gangs are back in the spotlight. Something that should have been done by British governments has been done by Rupert Lowe as an MP in an independent capacity. But don't let that fool you. Don't let that make you think that this is an amateur report. He involved legal teams. I've spoken about this inquiry extensively on my channel before, because our very own Nuria Khan has also taken part in that inquiry. She was asked, because of her expertise on Islam and a better understanding of Islamic culture and why some Muslims behave the way they do, she was asked by Rupert Lowe to come in and share her expert opinion. So I thought, why not play you her video clip herself? And we might even bring her on my channel and interview her more extensively. But Rupert Lowe has done a lot. I mean, this is definitely commendable. And the media is going absolutely insane on him. They are publishing articles after articles, launching scathing, unfair attacks on Rupert Lowe. Have a look at this. For example, this headline from The Independent: Rupert Lowe is rapidly becoming the most dangerous man you've never heard of. The BBC. And the funny thing is, none of these mainstream media outlets have actually covered the report, which is 220 pages long. I've downloaded it. Look at this, 35.2 million views this report has generated. And according to Rupert himself, more than 1 million people have downloaded this report. So, you know, that is quite remarkable. So let's have a listen to Nuria Khan. She was just interviewed on GB News. Let's see what she has to say.
We're also intent on naming those people in Parliament, where we're not going to prejudice a legal case, so that everybody knows those people who are responsible, who should have dealt with this, but failed to deal with it. So it's been a long, hard, arduous 16 months, and I want to thank everybody. And I hope that every member of the British public has the time to read this. It's not straightforward. It will take time, but it needs to be understood, and it needs to be dealt with, and dealt with now.
Well, we are hoping, I should say, to speak to Marlon West, the father of the rape gang abuse victim who's involved with this report. We just can't get to him just at this exact moment, having some technical difficulties, but we'll make sure we speak to him as soon as we can. Nuria Khan is with me now, and I'm delighted to have her back on the programme. Nuria, this is a very interesting, first of all, good evening, and thank you for joining me again. You're becoming a very valued and favoured guest because you speak such absolute common sense. On this rape gang inquiry, the inquiry found evidence of how the police discouraged victims, destroyed evidence, in some cases were active members of networks. Social care placed children into homes that became hubs for traffickers. The NHS failed to act on obvious signs of sexual abuse and even sent children back to their abusers. Schools ignored clear safeguarding concerns and instead punished and excluded victims. In the executive summary, it is written that the overwhelming majority of the rape gang network consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds, predominantly of Pakistani heritage, although smaller groups from Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish and other Muslim origins were involved. And there's quite a lot of detail, actually, I was reading about the doctrine of Muslim superiority drawn from Quranic verses that positions Muslims at the top with a duty to correct non-believers. The gang members' justification for their crimes can be found in the Islamic principles of loyalty and disavowal. It demands enmity towards non-Muslims, the superiority of men over women, forced marriage combined with the absence of any fixed minimum age of consent. The perception of female sexuality is inherently dangerous. A system of sex slavery that authorises sexual relations with non-Muslim captives, and a religiously sanctioned social hierarchy that subjugates conquered non-Muslims.
And not only just that, very quick point. Have a look at this. It's not just these men. And this is the biggest evidence that it's cultural. Have a look at this. This article was published back in 2017. Look at this. White girls are filthy. It's not the rapist who's saying that. It's their wives saying that. Wives of Asian men, British Pakistani Muslim, as you heard, mostly 90% of them were of Pakistani origin. And if you drilled further down, they were from this particular region of Pakistan called Mirpur. Wives of British Pakistani men jailed for harming vulnerable British girls reveal why they blame the victims. The sense of Muslim superiority. Even their wives are blaming the girls because that is coming directly from the Quran, because that infamous jilbab verse tells Muslim women to cover up so they are recognized that they are Muslim and are not, quote unquote, molested. Top Muslim writer persuaded the families of jailed rapists to share their stories, but behind their veils, the wives say they blamed the girls and their parents too, i.e. you, every single British person. This is why we said that Islam doesn't belong in the West. They have different ideological belief system. We don't feel anything wrong with our girls walking on the streets, okay, and playing on the streets, going to schools on their own. We don't feel this is inherent to Western culture, and we expect that men will behave themselves and they will not look at any vulnerable child or girl or a woman and pounce on them like animals. These people think otherwise. These people think that if a girl is wearing revealing clothes, then she's asking for it. That's what the Quran says. She could be molested. Umar, the second caliph, one of the best friends of Muhammad, once actually hired a non-Muslim slave girl, and he led her during the holy month of Ramadan while he was fasting. So he actually went to his friends, to other Muslim leaders, and he said, he wasn't concerned about hiring that girl. He was concerned about, is my fast broken? Because during your fast, Muslim men are not allowed to have intercourse even with their wives or sex slaves. This is the culture we're dealing with, guys. One woman described victims as filthy and said they dressed without respect. So that's the culture we're dealing with, guys. Let's listen to Nuria Khan.
Do you agree with that?
I mean, I was, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Peter. I wish it was under better circumstances,
Yes.
But I am so grateful that finally this report has come to light, regardless of how horrific and harrowing some of the details are in it. I was honored to be part of this in terms of giving evidence of the Islamic doctrine and, British Pakistani families' manifestations of how they interpret Islam in this context. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with what you've just said and say, yes, that is absolutely part and parcel of what's gone on to have this tragedy occur. And this is what makes this inquiry, and this is why I'm eternally grateful for Rupert Lowe, regardless of what you think of the man. He has gone beyond what any report has gone thus far. Take the J report, the Casey report. This report finally makes the inextricable link between religious and spiritual abuse, i.e. Islam in this case, with the actual abuse that was perpetrated. I have been saying this time and time again, as have many whistleblowers. We have taken victim survivors' testimonies from years ago, where they have been saying over and over again, time and time again, that there were certain words that were uttered to them, there were certain verses of the Quran being quoted to them as they were being beaten. They had racially motivated, indications from the perpetrators when they would call them, and I hate to say these things on air, but they would call them, white scum and slags, and make sure that they, in the Pakistani context, you say the word gora, it literally refers to white in their language, and then they would also enable Sharia law whenever they required to sometimes forcibly marry these young girls, and then they would treat them as their wives, who then they can beat as well, according to the Quran, and have them walk 5 feet behind them when they were going to a medical appointment to try and get a termination or something for when the abuse has gone awful. So you can imagine how much Islam played a part in this. We have to believe victim survivors when they've said to us from years ago that the grooming gangs operated like terror networks. What does that mean? That means that they recruit, and the ideology and the justifications are the exact same as they are when you're dealing with Islamic terrorism. This is an extension of that. And I'm very grateful that the report goes into jihad, and you understand the concept of waging war against non-Muslims requires also taking sexual slaves. And it's just like sexual warfare in any situation where you want to humiliate not only the native population, but the British state in a wider context.
How and why have we been so reticent to come to these conclusions before? Is it simply fear of being called racist? Because that has manifested itself in lots of different ways. It's not just about people not calling it out and saying these things. It's also manifested itself in lots of different ways of essentially saying, well, I don't want to be called racist, therefore I won't raise a child safeguarding concern. I won't refer this to social services, or it will be missed or put down the priority level by social services, by healthcare, by education. I mean, this is a multifaceted, systematic failure of, we're talking about, I mean, what is alleged to be 250,000 women and girls in this country in 149 local authority districts, close to 40% of all districts in the United Kingdom.
One key point to note here is that most of this abuse actually happened in Labour-dominated area. So yes, we have heard some testimonies from some police officers who've said that they didn't investigate because they didn't want to appear racist. I think that's not the whole truth. I don't think this is accurate description, because we will find out, and some people are already saying that it is mentioned in the report that a lot of people, there were people in the Labour Party, there were people in the police force who were actually involved, who covered it up, not only just covered it up, but actually took part in that. So the question is, why did the Tories not talk about this? Because it's not just the Labour Party that didn't act on it. Okay, it makes sense. They don't want to rattle their electorate. They don't. They might also be complicit in it. So it makes sense for Labour politicians or the Labour Party to cover it up. But what happened to the Tories? Why did the Tories? Isn't that how our democracies work? I reckon this is where the West started to fall apart. If you zoom out a little bit, the same thing happened in Australia as well. I don't know about America vis-a-vis the Democrats and the Republicans, but in Australia as well. And before I come to Australia, let me draw that parallel. Let me finish up with the UK. I was listening to a political commentator somewhere on TV where he was saying that after the Blair government, the Tories somehow accepted the changes brought in by the Blair government as the new default, and they had abandoned Thatcherite principles. And they thought that, okay, this is it. The world is going to be multicultural. This is a new norm. Let's get on with it. Now, if you look at it in Australia, our coalition, the Coalition Party, which is the coalition between the Liberals and the Nationals, they were meant to be more nationalistic. They were supposed to be on the right of the political spectrum. But after the Howard government, they also moved to the left. And both of our political parties became left-wing parties, essentially. Therefore, they stopped talking about the ills of multiculturalism. That's why I think the balance that was supposed to be there, the perfect, healthy balance between right-wing and left-wing politics that was supposed to keep our society in check, got thrown out of the whack. And we collectively drifted to the left. That created the culture of apathy, indifference, and turning a blind eye to the ills of multiculturalism. So that is my view on that. And have a look at this. Look at the kind of adverts they were putting out. Look at this. Look at this. They were using girls. They were using schoolgirls to appeal to refugees to come to the UK. Like, this is so twisted.
Shemai. Hello and welcome to Wales. We understand being a refugee isn't easy. They're going through so much. Fleeing your country is difficult, but Wales wants to help you feel welcome. The Welsh Refugee Council is here to help you. Wales is seen as a nation of sanctuary. We welcome anyone and everyone. We recognise your skills and talent. The Welsh Refugee Council offers a lot of support, including...
This is an advert put forward by the Welsh Council. Anyway, let's go back to Nuria Khan.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different factors at play here, Peter, but definitely across the board, there was this overarching fear of being labeled racist when dealing with perpetrators of a certain ethnic minority. And I would like to think, working in this sector, that we have come very far since then in recognizing group-based child sexual exploitation or seeing the warning signs, even when, on the baseline, it seems like, okay, this could be a vulnerable little girl and she is, abusing substances, or she's disappearing for long periods of time. But that's no reason to kind of close the case or dismiss it or fob it off as that she's got some behavioral problems. You need to still go that much further and investigate the case and raise safeguarding concerns. And I think there was failures all across the board, from them not showing up to colleges to the social care workers being, I would say, everything from being dismissive at the best to involved by themselves as well, and also marrying some of these. If you read some of the testimony within this inquiry, there are social care workers who are marrying the siblings of the victims of grooming gangs. So they're heavily involved in this circle of...
And I mean, I did a story, I think it was about a year ago, of someone who was dealing with care centres for vulnerable young people who are maybe in their late teens, who are perhaps such complex needs, or they're trying to get them in.
How's that different from prison guards abusing inmates, especially if they're male prison guards and they're abusing female inmates? How's that different from that?
To deal with themselves, to cook and clean and have a little room by themselves rather than being in foster care. And obviously it's very difficult to recruit for those kinds of jobs. And what happened was that there were people adjacent to these rape gangs, like sisters or brothers or whoever, who were going for those jobs and trying to recruit people within them. I did a very absolutely harrowing interview with someone on this about a year ago. And I just wonder what you would say, Nuria, to people who say Islam's a religion of peace. This is a bastardized version of what Islam is. This isn't how most Muslims worship or think. What would you say to that?
Most Muslims live under the bastardized version of Islam. These people are closer to Muhammad's Islam than the so-called mainstream Muslim community.
Look, most Muslims are not carrying this out, but the fact that this travesty has happened to English girls on an industrial scale in this country, and it was covered up to pander to the Muslim vote bank. I used to believe in this religion. The very verses that you see quoted by, everybody that's contributed to this inquiry, including fellow ex-Muslims like Ayan Hirsi Ali and other experts on Islam who have studied this religion, and whistleblowers who have been within the system, I can tell you that these verses and this disgusting othering and the way that Islam views non-Muslim women is so much the reason behind why I left the religion in the first place. I couldn't stomach it as a woman reading what the Quran said towards like how you should treat non-Muslim women, and the whole reason why Muslim women cover up in the first place so that they're not harassed and molested, because everybody else is okay to be harassed and molested. And if you look at the grooming gangs again, they targeted English girls, they targeted Sikh girls, and they targeted Hindu girls. What's the common denominator? They're all non-Muslim. Look at all the different ethnicities of the people involved. What's the common denominator? They're Muslim. So I would absolutely say, Peter, we cannot bury our heads in the sand anymore. Religious abuse played a huge part of this, and it's sanctioned by the very scriptures of Islam itself.
What do you think needs to happen now, especially as there is a statutory inquiry? It's barely got moving. It's been incredibly slow, and so many in the government party, so many in Labour, didn't want it. There was the deputy leader of the Labour Party who called it dog whistle politics. It is now established. It will happen, but it's going to take a long time. This of what is reported today as a non-statutory inquiry was put together by £600,000 of money donated to a GoFundMe, a fundraiser for it. There is a little bit more money, and they will try to have private prosecutions. But what do you think should happen now, Nuria?
Well, I think shame on the political parties, especially Labour, that it's taken this long. Thank goodness there was an independent inquiry, because we are now able to shine a spotlight on a big part and reason what was driving the mentality and motivation behind these perpetrators, which I'm so sorry to say, Peter, I don't think they're going to go into as much detail on that in the national inquiry, just because as a state, as an establishment, we do not touch Islam. We give it the same.
I agree with you. I cannot imagine a statutory inquiry that would go into this detail, would quote bits of Quranic verses and be as blunt and sort of straightforward about all this in a national inquiry. I was really not surprised. I'm not surprised that Rupert Lowe and others have written this, but one of the paragraph that absolutely stood out to me, Nuria, is political failure lies at the heart of this scandal. Successive governments lacked the will to confront the ethnic and religious patterns. The Labour Party bears particular responsibility. It initially refused a public inquiry and only relented under pressure by ordering a process viewed with widespread scepticism.
Exactly. They sacrificed their own girls, their own young, vulnerable girls at the altar of the vote bank. And I'm sorry to say, I do not see any change in that. They're going to tiptoe around the issues of Islam. They might, concede a few points and say, we will start to record the ethnicities of perpetrators. But I'm sorry, it does not go far enough. And it's too little too late. You need to have trauma-informed specialists across the board within these councils. You need people who actually understand how these Islamic principles manifest in the practical sense. How does an extremist Muslim mindset use the Quran to go and exploit a white working class girl? You need to understand that. You can't just, say in general, like, oh, we're going to look into this demographic more. Absolutely not. You need people who are going to confront the scripture and the fact that Islam does allow itself for this level of abuse and sexual violence if we really want to get serious about violence against women and girls. And just again, shame on any safeguarding minister or any minister who considers themselves an ally of women and girls and their safety in this country when they cannot even, they're sitting there kissing the rings of elders, going to these same councils who have covered up these very atrocities.
Nuria, always.
Let's not forget the criminal, I would say almost borderline criminal behavior of various British police departments. Have a listen to this. This is horrific. This man's daughter was kidnapped and was being abused by a Pakistani rape gang. He tried to rescue her, but then the police came and arrested him. Listen to him. Imagine this. Imagine, I can't wrap my head around this kind of injustice. Where would you go? Your state is supposed to protect you and side with you when you know something like this is happening. But instead, they sided with the abusers.
I'd got a phone call to say where Elizabeth was. So I come across, because I lived on next estate, I come across, banged on the door. I saw a movement in curtain. Then within probably 5 minutes, a police car arrived. They asked me what I was doing. I told them. They arrested me and took me back to where I lived, and then they arrested me. So obviously I'm sat in house again, and I will getting more and more frustrated.
I can now understand why Americans say you got to have a gun. I think in that situation, if you're a father, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine. This is, oh my goodness. This is a stuff where, I don't think you care about the law, especially when the law doesn't even protect you. What would you do if you know that in that house your child is being abused by men? I'll get in trouble if I said what I'm thinking, but I know what you mean. I think every father would do that.
So I come back over to the flat.
Well, an hour later or something, was it?
It was about 20 minutes.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So it seemed within minutes, a van pulled up this time, and I think there were 2 or 3 officers. They arrested me, took me down to the police station. Took me in police station. They didn't take me to where they usually charge people and that. They took me straight through into a room near cells. So I'm in there. About half an hour later, they come and got me. Come on, you're going. I went, what do you mean? Just follow me, they said. So I followed them, and they took me through officers and out from where police station is, where public going. And they warned me if I come back to the flat, I'd be arrested for stalking. Because stalking laws had just come in then, serious ones. So they let me go.
But what happens if you say, like, my daughter's in there, I want my daughter out? What do they say to you? She isn't in there, or she wants to stay in there, or what do they say to you?
The way it was what they were saying to me, it was what they were threatening me with. You know what I mean? They wouldn't answer me questions. Why wouldn't they get her out? Why wouldn't they let me get her out then if they don't want to do it? And I just kept coming back all the time. Look, you're targeting people because of their race. I said, I'm not at all. It's because what?
Targeting people because of their race. My goodness, guys. We need to know the names of these police officers. They need to be put in prison for a very freaking long time. I'm assuming his daughter was underage. How is that justifiable by any stretch of imagination?
what they're doing. These are grown men.
If you have any doubt in your mind that this has got nothing to do with Islam and these are just some bad apples following some bastardized version of Islam, listen to this Muslim woman who doesn't even know anything about the grooming gangs or all of these gangs. And by the way, this grooming gang or the rape gang phenomenon is not unique to Britain. In France, it's the Algerians. In Germany, it's the Syrians and the Turks. In Sweden, it's the Syrians again. So everywhere you look at, and in Spain, it's the Moroccans. Why is it? We never hear of the Hindu rape gangs. Yes, every community has its own fair share of sex pests, but this is a very unique phenomenon that has been witnessed and observed in the West, which is predominantly perpetrated by Muslims. And why them? This Muslim woman will explain it to you now.
لكن لما الإسلام جه بقى نظمه بإيه؟ إن لا يكون إلا عن طريق الحرب المشروعة بين المسلمين وبين أعدائهم. يعني لو إحنا حاربنا إسرائيل وإسرائيل دي مغتصبة للأرض بل ومعتدية على البشر وعلى العقيدة، وطبعا إحنا بنتكلم المستحيل، يعني مستحيل إن إحنا هيجي اليوم اللي نحارب فيه إسرائيل، ولو إن سورة الإسراء مبشرة بكده يعني، وليس مستحيلا على الله سبحانه وتعالى. فأصل الحرب من النساء هم ملك اليمين.
This is why when Israel tells you that what happened on October the 7th this is not just an action against the Jews. It's against all of you. It's against every non-Muslim. The Hindus have also observed this phenomenon in India. They call it the love jihad. It's the same people everywhere.
بمعنى إن عشان أذلهم بيصبحوا ملكا للقائد أو للجيش
of a Muslim. Muhammad shared Jewish women around with his fellow soldiers. In fact, you might have heard of this woman. Her name was Safiya. She was picked by another Muslim soldier, and Muhammad heard about it from one of his commanders or something, and they said, "Oh, dear Prophet, you might like that one. Her name is Safiya. She's really beautiful. You might like her." But Muhammad called for her to come, and then when she appeared, he gave 2 of his own other sex slaves to the original commander, and he said, "Give her back to me." This is the guy these people literally worship. He is presented as the greatest man who ever lived, the horniest man who ever lived, perhaps.
المسلم يستمتع بيهم كما يستمتع بزوجاته. بعض بقى المتنطعين والمتشددين واللي بيسيئوا للإسلام يقول لك أنا أجيب واحدة من شرق آسيا تكون ملك يمين وبموافقة زوجتي أخصص لها غرفة وأستمتع بيها كملك يمين. هذا هراء وهذا ادعاء يعني لا يقول به الإسلام إطلاقا، لأن الإسلام بيقول إما على الزوجة وإما ملك اليمين. فإحنا هنا ملك اليمين بالمشروع هو نتيجة أسرى الحرب ضد.
Okay, so you might actually say, I have to present their argument clearly, which is why I have always said that they draw a direct line from Islam. However, Islam itself says that you can only do it as an act of war. The problem here is, why are we seeing this phenomenon all across the West by Muslim men only? Why? As I said, it's the Moroccans in Spain, it's the Algerians in France, it's the Syrian and Turks in Germany, it's the Syrians in Sweden, always exclusively against non-Muslim women. Well, because it's very easy for Muslims to tell themselves that this is Darul Harb. Darul Harb means Islam, as a doctrine, divides the world into 2 spheres. Darul Islam, Darul Harb. Darul Islam means the house of Islam. Darul Harb means the house of war. Now, I know not every Muslim sees it like this, because most Muslims probably don't care. But it's very easy for any Muslim to say, okay, I am living in a house of war. This is an infidel country, infidel land. They're racist towards my people. They hate Islam. They make fun of my religion. They make fun of my prophet. Therefore, we are at war with these people. So many Muslim scholars have said it. We are at war with these people. Then, when you are at war with these people, then any woman that you capture becomes your slave girl. This is what, so you could say that this is not the exact teaching of Islam, but because that provision exists in Islam, that's why it's possible for Muslim men to do these things. There are no such teachings in Hinduism or Buddhism. That's why we don't see Hindu rape gangs. That's why we don't see Buddhist rape gangs or Sikh rape gangs. And this is why when you see a Hindu PDF file or Hindu R person, Hindu rapist, he will be embarrassed. He would try to cover his face. I have shown so many videos of Muslim PDFs getting caught by vigilante groups in the UK. You know what they say? In my religion, it's perfectly fine. They have no shame because there is a provision within their doctrine, within their political ideology, masquerading as religion, that they can do these things and they can justify these things. I think this is not going to stop. This is going to keep going over the year, or over the coming days and weeks. We're going to see a lot more of this, and it will become impossible for the media to keep ignoring that. Right now, they are only attacking Rupert Lowe, but it's not going to go on for long because this crime, some estimates put the number to be around 250,000 girls. This is an entire generation that is lost, an entire generation. There has to be a day of reckoning. That police officer or police officers who arrested that father, there are countless stories like that. My heart, I don't know what I would do, guys. I am a father of a girl. I don't understand what I'll do. I think your life will come to an end. And yeah, that's just that. Yeah, it cannot. Obviously, I have to be careful, but you know, every father out there knows what he will do. And to ask a father to sit down and just absorb it, oh, that is criminal beyond imagination.